everyone, welcome to Atlas Watches, where we're talking, you guessed it, watches. Now I'm finally bringing you a review of the Seiko Monster Jade 3rd generation that has been highly requested by so many of you. But before we get in the actual review, I'd like to talk a bit about the history of this particular model and the Seiko lineup. So let's get to it. So as you can see here, we have 3 different generations of the Seiko Monster. The production of the Seiko Monster began as early as the year 2000 or 2001, so almost 2 decades of monsters. There are many color variations between the 3 generations, but we will stick to orange on all of them, as it's easier to see the differences, and although at a glance they seem very similar, there are quite a few things that set them apart. First of all, the case design and the bezel is pretty much the same on all 3 models, except perhaps the texture on the crowns. 1st generation having these notches on the crown, and the 2nd and 3rd generation having knurled finish on the crown, which I think provides a better grip than the one on the 1st gen, although I haven't had the chance to feel it in person. Going on to the crystal, they are all fitted with Hardlex crystal, which is hardened mineral crystal, but the 3rd generation also has an added Cyclops fitted, which is a magnifying glass just above the date. Next up, if we take a look at the dial, you can see that the loomed hour markers on the 1st and 3rd gen are pretty much the same, which is this rectangular-ish shape, unlike the 2nd generation, which take the shape of shark teeth, as many people call it. This gives the 2nd gen an even more aggressive look than the other 2. The 1st gen also has the numeric minute indicators below or above the loomed hour markers, and this completely disappears on the 2nd and 3rd gen. On the 3rd gen, the day function is missing from the dial, leaving only the date, whereas both are present in the 1st and 2nd generation. Another difference on the dial is the added Prospex logo on the 3rd generation. Prospex stands for professional specification, and it's basically Seiko telling you that the watch has been made to a very high standard to be used by professionals. Another big difference between these watches is the movement. The 1st gen features the 7S26 movement, which is the same movement as in the SKX. A proven reliable movement with a 40-hour power reserve, but with a lack of functionality that some might call it being worthy of a blasphemy, and that being the lack of hacking and hand winding. For those of you that don't know, hacking is the ability to stop the seconds hand from operating by pulling out the crown, which would let the user be very accurate when setting the time. And hand winding is the ability to wind up or power up the watch by twisting the crown. The 2nd generation monsters use the 4R36 movement, which is an upgraded 7S26, which offers an extra hour of power reserve, but most importantly, it offers hacking and hand winding. And the 3rd generation uses the 6R15 movement, which again is an upgrade from the 4R36, but this time with a power reserve of 50 hours. Now I'll just quickly show you the box the watch came in. Very cheap looking box, to be honest. Now I'm not too sure if this is the original box, since I have seen another box of the Seiko Monster and it has a Prospex logo on it, as I have bought this watch used. I'm not too sure, but I think this could be one of the boxes it might come in, depending on the retails or manufacturers. I'm not even too sure, but anyway, cheap box, very cheap, very flimsy even. They definitely didn't put too much thought into it. Inside we have the original Seiko Monster bracelet. The bracelet itself, it's okay, I guess. You definitely won't be blown away by the quality. It's even got a bit of a flimsy feeling as well. If you had any experience with the strap code Miltat bracelets, it's definitely not on par. It's much cheaper feeling. It's definitely not as good and not as solid. Even if I were to compare to the strap, the bracelet I have it on my monster is a strap code engineer bracelet. Definitely looks much better and it's definitely more solid. To have some spare links, a tag, and we just have the instructions manual with the warranty. It's here. So yeah, nothing too fancy, just very standard stuff here. So we can just put that away now. Now, when I first started seeing these Seiko monsters, I thought this has to be one of the ugliest watches I have ever seen. I just thought it had nothing going for it and it didn't appeal to me at all. But the more I started seeing it, the more apparent it became that this watch has an incredible charm and it's so unique you can't really compare it to anything else out there. I soon started to like it more and more, and when I bumped into this Jade Sunburst dial variant, I absolutely fell in love with it. After I have finally scratched my itch, this watch quickly became my favorite watch from my collection. So to get the dimensions out of the way, this monster measures 47.5mm lug to lug, it's 42mm in diameter excluding the crown, and 20mm lug width, which are actually drilled, so it makes it very easy to change straps. Contradictory to its robust and tough looks, it's actually not that big. And no, that's not what she said. Leaving jokes aside, this watch actually wears smaller than it might suggest, and I think it's mainly due to the short lug-to-lug width. As a reference, I have 7-inch wrists, and this watch wears perfect. If we have a look around the watch, you can see the lugs actually extend in height, which protrudes halfway up the bezel, and also extends to act as crown guards. And while we're at the crown guards, the crown itself has a knurled finish which makes it very easy to get a good grip and operate. The case and the bezel has a combination of brushed and polished finishing which altogether look great. Now onto the side of the bezel, you get these notches which continue onto the case itself. This, along with even smaller machined lines in between it, makes it very easy to get a grip and turn. On top of the bezel we have a brush finish. You also have machined minute markers which are filled with glossy black paint and additional lumed pip at 12 o'clock. The 120 click bezel, which is unidirectional, as a whole has no play and has a smooth and precise operation. If in the video the bezel looks like it has a little bit of play, that can actually be very deceiving. It's just this bezel, it's a bit on the easier side to turn. That doesn't mean it will turn by accident by any means, but it just has a bit of an easier, smoother operation compared to perhaps a couple of other divers that I have. I think I could be here all day talking about the dial, because it's a work of art and quite frankly, I just can never get enough of it. But this Jade Sunburst dial will play with light like crazy. In some lighting conditions appearing more green, and in others appearing more blue. On it we have the date window, bordered by a white line. The printed Seiko and Prospex logo, along with more printing indicating the movement being automatic, and that it's a diver's watch, water resistant up to 200 meters. The dial also consists of large, lumed hour markers and hands filled with LumiBright, which is Seiko's own proprietary lume. It has also a marginal layer on top of the Sunburst dial which indicates the hours and the minute markers. Behind this dial, deeper into the case, is the 6 or 15 movement, a movement with a base architecture of a proven reliable movement, the 7S26. It is an automatic movement with a power reserve of 50 hours, offering hacking and hand-winding ability. It runs at 6 beats per second and should have an accuracy of plus 25, minus 15 seconds a day. Although I measured mine and I got minus 3 seconds a day, which I'm sure can get even more accurate with a bit of regulation. The crystal Seiko uses on this particular piece is Hardlex crystal. Hardlex crystal is hard and mineral crystal. Now some of you might be a bit disappointed that Seiko doesn't use sapphire crystal on this particular piece, which would be more scratch resistant than this Hardlex crystal, but less shatterproof. Now, although I take very good care of my watches, I can assure you that this Hardlex crystal is very up for the job, and I've gotten absolutely no scratches on it as of yet, in more than 6 months of use. On the case back, we have the Great Wave of Kanagawa, stamped and surrounded by some general information about the watch. Without going into too much detail, this Great Wave of Kanagawa is a piece of art that came to life thanks to Mr. Katsushika Hukosai. And to go away from my absolutely atrocious Japanese accent, onto a few more points before I end this review. Do I have anything negative to say about the watch, or is there something I wish it had? Probably not. Initially, I didn't like the Cyclops on the dial, and before acquiring it, I was even thinking of the possibility of changing the crystal to one that didn't have the Cyclops, but I don't mind it at all, and I probably wouldn't even change it for free if I had the chance. If I were to be nitpicking on this watch, again, it doesn't bother me in any way, shape or form, but I do think at this price range, which is about €500, having the crown signed with an S or a Seiko or a Prospex logo would have been a very nice touch. At €500, I personally think this watch has a lot going for it, and even in today's market it would be very hard to rival it. Even though initially the Seiko Monster lineup has hit the market with a price tag of around €200, it has gradually improved and refined the Seiko Monsters, leading to higher production costs and even perhaps trying to adopt new marketing strategies to be able to charge more for their "a lot of watch for the money" tag that's been put on many of their models. I personally love everything about this watch. It screams toughness and robustness, and with a very imposing wrist presence. Very solidly built and reliable, it's versatile and stunning, especially with this Jade dial. Now the lume Seiko uses on their watches, which is Lumi Bright, it's really top notch. It charges very quickly, it's super bright, and has great longevity. This watch will easily light up the whole night. I have gotten quite a few compliments on this watch, and a couple of non-watch guys have even mistaken it for a Rolex. When questioned what is it about the watch that makes it look like a Rolex, as in my opinion it's very far off one, they said the stunning dial was the main reason why they thought it resembles a lot with Rolex. Now whether you love or hate Rolex, you can only take such compliments in a good way, as we're talking about a €500 watch and Rolex, which you know very well can go up to tens of thousands and even hundreds of thousands of dollars. I really hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, please hit the like button, comment, and subscribe for more watch related content. You can also check my Instagram page where I post pictures of my watches and a sneak peek of future videos. Thanks for watching.